want to know, what do you have to say? Because now if you don't give us permission to stone her, then you're going against what Moses said. And we know you can't be God if you don't go along with what Moses said, because God gave Moses the law back on Mount Sinai. And we just want to know what you got to say. We got our rocks. We ready. Tell us about the improper motive. We live in a world that is fascinated with the idea of getting in other people's business. And so much so that our television programming is filled with all kinds of court shows now, from the People's Court to you name it. And we sit and we watch TV for hours at a time, listening to other folks' business, drawing conclusions based on what is presented on the television. And with some of the shows, they go a step further and they walk out on the sidewalk and just ask the person walking down the street who perhaps didn't even hear the case, what is your opinion? And we're quick to formulate opinions, give insight and ideas to whatever we think is going on. Even now, we have become so fascinated with this matter of getting in other folks' business, judging other people's lives, until now you've had to hear people say, listen, I'm not going to allow my case to be tried in the public, but I will allow it to be tried in a court of law. You've heard others at times say, I'm not going to allow my case to be tried in the media, but I'm going to allow it to be tried in a proper court of law. Because all around us, there are people, not you, and you don't have to get quiet. If you get quiet, then the person sitting next to you will think that I'm talking about you. But there are so many people who rush to judgment looking for opportunities to judge other people's lives. And now judgment is taking place all over the world. On television, on the radio, talk shows and talk radio, and all of the Jerry Springer shows and Maury shows, and on. We're always casting judgment, passing judgment on one another. But I want to remind you of an old saying that used to, be repeated from time to time to reinforce the idea that you ought not be quick to judge. They say, you ought not judge a book by its cover. And what that basically says is sometimes you can just look at the cover of the book and decide whether you want to read it or not, and then other times you'll form an opinion of the book and never take the time to read the book. Many times there have been interviews that have taken place on television, and individuals would get up and talk about their book, and the interviewer would start talking about stuff that's in the book and on certain pages, and the person that was supposed to have written the book was lost, clueless. And it became obvious that a ghostwriter had written the book because they didn't know what was in the book. And so we ought not judge one another. That's the first thing. And then we ought not rush to judgment by, judging the book based on its cover. And as I thought about that, I was reminded again of a story I heard about a farmer who lived in the rural one day, and he left his little daughter at home and he went to town to get groceries. And when he came back, he discovered man's best friend, his beloved dog, sleep on the porch with blood all over his mouth. And when he went in to the house, he discovered his daughter had been mauled to death. Immediately, he got his gun and he went out on the porch and he shot his dog. He killed the dog. A little later, he walked around the backside of the house and he discovered that there was a dead bobcat in the backyard, a dead coyote, and a dead snake. And it was then at that moment that he came to realize that the reason his dog had blood on his mouth was because the dog had killed the predators who had come for his daughter. And in essence, he kills the dog by mistake because he rushed to judgment. How many times have we rushed to judgment and shot people when there was no need to shoot them at all? Sometimes we get obsessed with the obvious. I'm like, well, it's got to be so. So-and-so said. A reliable source said. When it comes to life and real life issues and things that occur in life, can I help somebody today? Someone said that there are 3 sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the truth. And sometimes the truth is hard to get at. And that's why you ought not rush to judgment, because there have been many people who have been tried and convicted and sent to prison, all because a reliable source said so. Have you not heard of cases where they put an expert witness on the stand? Someone who's supposed to know the intricacies of this field and this area and give unique insight that will definitely incriminate the one who is on trial, and they go on and get a conviction, and then 25 years later they come back and discover that the expert witness was not as credible as they thought they were. And now this person has to be exonerated because they have been wrongfully convicted. We ought not be quick to judge one another. There's a place where judging does happen. And in terms of civil matters, civil laws, criminal laws, there are people there that have been trained. They've gone to school. Tell somebody they've gone to school to become lawyers. They've gone to school to become judges. They have learned how to present the evidence and how to examine the evidence. And even then, there are times when the justice system is flawed. And that's why we've got to trust God to do the judging, because we're not always equipped to judge. We don't have the background, the training, the skills, and the insight, because man looks at the outer appearance, but God looks at the heart. And aren't you glad that God sees what others don't see? Aren't you glad that God understands what others don't understand? I'm reminded of another story about a man who went to court, and he was being tried, and as he was being tried, they put out all the evidence. They were going over the evidence, and they went on to cross-examine him in one way or another. And then finally, the judge looked at him and said, "Now, did you do it?" And the man said, "Well, let me explain." The judge said, "No, we got the evidence. We got the case. It's been presented. Now, did you do it?" And the man said, "But let me explain." And the judge said, No, the case has been presented. The evidence is before you. Now just tell me, did you do it?" And the man turned, looked at the judge, and he said, "Judge, are you still beating your wife?" Judge said, "Oh, wait. Let me explain it. Somebody will catch that on their way home. Some things have to be explained. Judge was quick to convict in the case of somebody else, but in his own life, he wanted to explain. And that's what the text is talking about in Matthew chapter 7. It says, "Judge not," because here's the point, that as you judge, you got to be prepared for the boomerang effect. For the text teaches us that as you pronounce judgment upon other people, he said it's going to be measured again to you. And if you got issue with the text, I just want to remind you that these are the words of Jesus as he spoke on, that wonderful day that we talk about, the Sermon on the Mount. And as he gave the Beatitudes, he continued with application of the Beatitude so that we can learn how to properly behave. so that we would know how to handle ourselves in the light of life's realities. And therefore Jesus says, judge not, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it, it will be measured to you. So in other words, if you can't take it, don't dish it. Because by whatever standard you measure other folk, that's the same standard by which you'll be measured. And then he goes on to say, why say to your brother, I see a speck in your eye? Let me get the speck out of your eye when you got a beam in your own eye. What Jesus said is we're quick to try to identify something in somebody else's life, when on the other hand, we have something far worse in our own life. And sometimes what we're talking about in somebody else's life is small in comparison to what is wrong in our own lives. Sometimes what's wrong in our own lives is far bigger than what we see in other folks. He said, so start with yourself. Tell somebody, start with yourself. He said, and when you get the beam out of your own eye, then you can help get the speck out of somebody else's eye. He says, you hypocrite, first you take that log out of your own eye, and then you can help your brother. Jesus found himself also confronted on another occasion with some folk who had the tendency to judge other folk. And you just write this down in your notes in John chapter 8. The text says in verse 2, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him. And he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commands us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. See, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 that the reason why you can't judge is because you got to make sure that your stuff is in order. And then not only that, but you got to make sure that your motive is right. Because in John chapter 8, these holier than thou men come together to judge a woman, but their motives were not right. And so they wanted to exploit and expose this woman publicly that they might get at Jesus. See, every time people judge you, it's not always because you've done something wrong, but sometimes they got an ulterior motive that they're trying to work. And that's why you got to be careful about how you give revelations about other folk. Because sometimes you're giving a declaration about yourself. Okay. Let me see if I can say it another way. You got to be careful about what you say about other folk, because sometimes you reveal how you really think. Okay, all right. Y'all ain't feeling that one? Okay, let me say it one more time. Sometimes when you seek to judge other people, what you're saying to people is, if I were in their position, then this is what I would do. And so since this is what I would do, then apparently that must be what they have done. And can I tell you something? Folk get up early in the morning with mess. Folk get up early in the morning with the intent to get in your business. The text says it was early in the morning. Tell somebody, early in the morning. Early in the morning. Look where they went to get in folk business. They went to church. Now let me throw this in for free. I'm just teaching, trying to help what Jesus talked about, because I'm just staying with the series, Explore God. This week, Pastor's supposed to talk about judging. Listen, these folk got up early in the morning, put on their church clothes, put their Bibles under their arm, and went to church to start some mess. They did it at the house of God in the name of the Lord. They didn't bring this woman to Jesus so Jesus could help her. They brought her to Jesus so that they could stone her and set Jesus up in a trick bag. We know Moses to be great. He gave us the law, said that if one does this kind of thing, we ought to stone him. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to stone him. But we want to know, what do you have to say? Because now if you don't give us permission to stone her, then you're going against what Moses said. And we know you can't be God if you don't go along with what Moses said, because God gave Moses the law back on Mount Sinai. And we just want to know what you got to say. We got our rocks. We ready. Tell somebody improper motives. They got up early in the morning, got dressed, put on their church clothes, put their Bibles under their arm, went to the church so they could judge somebody. You ought not be quick to judge somebody when they come to church, because you really don't know their story. You don't know what they had to go through in order to get here. You don't know what they got to face when it's over with. And as much as they may come here sometimes dressed like they've been to a strip club, maybe they have. But maybe they got convicted last night and decided, I'm going to church this morning. And then they run into a holier than thou church patrol that runs them down in the foyer and say, you ought not be walking up in here looking like that. When they made up in their mind last night that this is my last night, that I'm going to swing from that pole. Tell somebody, you never know. Early in the morning. Have you ever had folk call you early in the morning with mess? Or maybe you walked in church this morning and somebody greeted you with mess. We caught this woman, can I go further? In the very act of adultery. Now, the obvious point is that no one commits adultery by themselves. And so you brought this woman caught in the very act of adultery. Where's the brother? You know, it's interesting when it comes to how we handle judging, one-sided cases. And Jesus looking at this, Jesus teaching, trying to share the word, and here they come with some mess. Caught them in the very act. How do you catch somebody in the very act? You either had to be a peeping Tom, or you had to be a participant, or maybe you were holding the camera in the very act, early in the morning. You had time to get up, go over your morning devotional, shower and get dressed, put your cologne on, and then go round up this woman in the very act and get to church before the praise team could open up to worship. Early in the morning. Where were you last night? I mean, it's right here in the text. I ain't making it up. They came early in the morning. That was the text. It didn't say they just came to church. They came early. They were at the 9 o'clock service. They were here early. Gee, what do you have to say? Sometimes people judge others because it makes them feel better in their own mind. In some sick and psychotic way, they think they feel better about themselves when they judge other people. And so Jesus is looking at this situation. They said, now what do you want us to do about this? And the Bible says that when they said all that, they were tempting him to accuse him, to set him up. They really was exploiting this woman for the sake of trying to get at Jesus Christ. They had improper motives. And notice what happens. Jesus stooped down, and with his finger, he wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. Sometimes you got to ignore some stuff. And then and so they continued to ask him, and he lifted up himself and said, he that's without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. Jesus said, examine yourself, because life has a boomerang effect, and as you judge others, so shall you be judged. Jesus said, go on. He didn't tell him put down your rock. He said, go on, throw it, but check yourself first. Because with whatever measure you meet others, it shall be met again unto you. So in other words, if you don't want to be judged in the way that you're judging other folk, then you can't justify judging folk the way that you do. Some theologians said that perhaps Jesus started writing names and dates and places in the dirt. And from the oldest down to the youngest, they said, I better get out of here before you get to my name. And maybe Jesus was writing in the dust just to remind them that we all are a little dirty. And maybe we all have a little dust here or there. So before I get to your stuff, you might want to take a second look at yourself. And the text says, they started walking away. Tell somebody to put down your rocks. And the woman was left standing there in the midst alone. And when Jesus looked up, there was nobody with him. He said, woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, no man, Lord. That's the key word. She says, no man, Lord. Jesus said to her, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. In other words, Jesus said, I forgive you. And that's what the faith is all about, finding forgiveness and acceptance. And so Jesus says to her, go and sin no more. In other words, you've been forgiven. And aren't you glad that we serve a God who's in the business of forgiving us? And if you've ever been wrongfully accused, if you've ever been judged, if you've ever found yourself being scrutinized, I want you to know we serve a God who relates and understands. And he says to this woman, go and sin no more. How do I know he relates and how do I know he understands? Because I need to help somebody know this. He was falsely accused. He was mistreated, judged improperly, 3 kangaroo courts, convicted and executed, hung on a cross and left for dead. But thanks be unto God that wasn't the end of the story. For where men had accused him and where men had judged him falsely, and where men had executed him without cause, crucified him on the cross, buried him in the tomb. But God had the last word. For on resurrection morning, Jesus rose from the dead and declared, all power is in my hand. Oh, I thank God that he is the eternal judge. That it matters not what men have to say about us. It matters not what men do to us. The final case is in the hands of the Lord. And so don't worry about it if you've been accused. Don't worry about it if you've been attacked. Don't worry about it if you've been judged without cause, convicted and thrown away. We serve a God who sees and knows all things. We serve a God who understands what you're going through. And that's why we used to sing a song, Lord, you know when I'm right, and you know when I'm wrong. While I'm down here praying, Lord, search my heart, straighten me, strengthen me, because I want to be right. Do I have any witnesses here? Aren't you glad that we serve a God who understands? Aren't you glad we serve a God who understands? I said, aren't you glad we serve a God who understands? And I'm so glad that he's a God of another chance. Have I got a witness here? David can testify. He said, I had a bad track record. Got caught up with Bed Bath and Beyond. I've had had some marks against me. But when it was all over, God said I was a man after his own heart, because he knows when I'm right and he knows when I'm wrong. Have I got a witness here? And I'm so glad that the judging is on his hand and not man's hand. Have I got a witness here? It's not mama, not daddy, not sister, not brother, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. And if you call on him, he'll understand. He will make a way. He will provide for you. He will take care of you. He says, come unto me just like you are, and I will in no wise cast you out. I'm done. I know y'all holy rollers. I know you got halos on your head, wings on your back, ain't never done anything wrong. But I close by saying I came to Jesus just like I was, weary, wounded, and sad. But I found in him a resting place, and he has made me glad. Look at your neighbor and just high five him and tell him, Jesus, drop the charges. Case dismissed. Oh, that's enough. That's enough. I know you can't get with that because you ain't never done anything wrong. Oh, but if I just had one or two in the house who could be honest about it and say, I did do it. But Jesus dropped the charges. That's why I praise him like I do. That's why I worship him like I do. Because he dropped the charges. Ain't he all right? Ain't he all right? Shout yes.
To purchase a copy of today's message in its entirety on CD or DVD, call us at 1-888-888-SJBC or visit our website. Join Pastor Denny D. Davis and the St. John family for one of our 5 weekend worship services. Our Dress Down Casual service on Saturdays at 6 p.m. at our Grand Prairie location, or Sundays at Grand Prairie at 7 a.m., 9 a.m., and 11 a.m., or our South Lake campus at 10 a.m. St. John Church, ministering in multiple locations. Church Unleashed.